Welcome to the Bookology Podcast. I'm your co host, Jonathan Jones, and I'm here with my father, Dr. Fred Jones, the world's only worthologist and bookologist. Dad, how are you doing today?
Doing great. It's a wonderful day.
Yes, sir, on top and going higher. I once heard a man say. Um, so now, just in the last episode, we just really wanted to give the people a place to start in regards to
Right,
talking about writing an effective outline.
right,
because
right.
because like we talked about in the episode just before, we talked about that is a great structure to start. That's
Mm-hmm.
a great place to start.
Right.
So now we're going to talk about going from the outline and then turning that into a manuscript, or as some others
Hmm.
might know it, as being called as a book draft. Dad, just talk with us a little bit about that.
Well, once you got your outline, it's kind of like framing a house. You got the two by fours, the wood, and all the rooms are there. The skeleton is built. It's there. It's kind of like a skeleton without meat on the bones. But then next, you come in and you start putting up the walls and you start putting up the ceiling and you build on it. The outline get you going. Now, here's what you can do with a good outline. Number one, if you got a great outline with 5 to 7 or 9 questions built into your outline, just
Hmm.
answer the questions. Just start answering the questions on each one of those points and just answer it with as much detail and specificity as you possibly can. Answer it as colorful as you can and go and give as much information as you can or as much as needed to get the content written. That would be my main suggestion to anyone who has gotten an outline. Now you're ready to get started? Then put questions to each of the subparts of the outline and answer them in great detail.
So getting the content out there is one of the biggest pieces, biggest suggestions that you would say.
Absolutely. Here's why. You can't edit a blank page, but you can edit a page that's 2 or 3 pages. And so creating that content doesn't have to be hard. That's the first thing you need to know. Because you could sit down and have someone interview you for each of those sections of your book. And there you would have the content right there to get started, to move through your outline.
Mm, okay, okay. And understanding, just I'm gonna stay with your analogy. I'm gonna rewind it back a little bit, because you were talking about getting a good outline in places is like the foundation of a house or a home,
Mm-hmm.
and having that skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we know, when there's some contractors, when there's some engineers, etc., when they build homes, sometimes there are challenges as they go through this process. What
Mm-hmm.
challenges would you say take place in this process, or what some pitfalls that you can help the authors of abundance stay clear of?
Well, there are 2 or 3. Number one, don't try to write your book and edit it at the same time. Okay?
Mm,
That's the main thing. Don't write and edit at the same time. Number two, don't throw away anything once you have written. Keep the content of what you've written, because what you think is bad content, somebody else is going to think is excellent. Number three, have a trusted editor on standby. Notice I said a trusted editor, somebody that you trust, somebody that you feel comfortable with, who's going to help you make your words look better. So don't edit while you are writing. Number one.
mhm.
Number two, don't throw anything away once you've written it. And number three, locate a trusted editor to help you um, put your words in order and to polish them.
Okay, find a trusted editor. So would my mother, who is who my mother, who may work for a corporation downtown, as a financial advisor, would she be a trusted editor?
Ah, ah, ah. Aunt
So my
Sally.
uncle. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna let you give up to me. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so my uncle, I mean, he writes poetry sometimes,
Hmm.
and he has all of these poems in a scrapbook or in a journal somewhere, and I think he's pretty good with words. Would he be a trusted editor?
Not at all. Notice what you just said. He writes poetry. He has all these poems in a binder somewhere. He probably hadn't published any of them. He might be a good writer, but who says he's a good writer? But no, family members are not, friends are not, even your high school teachers may not be a good editor for you. You're going to want to call maybe the English department at a college or university, the master's degree program or higher. They have writing communities, and there would be a good place to start in locating an editor from a college or university's English department. They have a group of writers that'll probably be more than glad to help you with your editing.
Okay, so the place to go, like you just said, would be potentially a college or university, a master's level or higher,
Hmm.
just
Exactly.
in regards to finding a good editor on standby. You said.
Right. Exactly. A good editor, or find somebody that could work along with you to help you get your book edited. Hmm.
Okay, excellent. That's good to know. That's good for the people to know. And I'm taking a note as well. I'm taking a note as well. So what would be another challenge that you could potentially foresee just in this stage of writing, heading towards a manuscript or a book draft?
That's a very good question. Here's a challenge. Most writers don't realize that whatever they write is intellectual property. Your draft is intellectual property. Okay? All right. It's your copyright. And copyright is the legal interest that you have in a book. All right. Now, here's the deal. When you hand your manuscript over to an editor, you should have an agreement in place. Hello, there should be an agreement that the editor will edit your work, the editor will not own it, the editor will not contribute or add to it, and whatever the editor contributes or add to, it's part of the working agreement and it becomes the product of the author. So the challenge, John, is making sure that authors have the right forms in place before they pass their manuscripts on to other people. And I've seen lots of people today passing their manuscript on to coaches and consultants and editors and formatters. You don't have any type of agreement in place. And if you don't have an agreement in place, you very well could be handing over your very valuable property to somebody else and to realize that they published it before you have.
Like we've been talking about before, that's the potential to be handing over your legacy.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a
Mm, ju-
major challenge right there.
yeah, because just like I know one thing that you shared before. I've heard you share it before, like the individuals who sung the birthday song,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, for
Correct.
people who don't know,
Correct.
talk a little bit about that story.
Well, that's a story that goes back for some years now, but it recently been resolved probably within the last 10 years. The Happy Birthday song was originally written in the back of a children's book by two sisters, okay? And the children's book was published by a small publishing company. That small publishing company went out of business. A larger publishing company bought that company, and when you buy a publishing company, you buy all the manuscripts and books and so forth that that company has published. Well, the big company bought the small company, and in the small company's portfolio was this children's book, and in the back of it was this song, Happy Birthday. And that company got ownership of that song, and for many, many, many years, they generated a lot of money as a result of that song that they purchased from a publishing company that went out of business. Okay, and so that is a big old reason why you want to make sure you got the right agreements in place before you hand your material over to someone else.
Mm, Man, I just hate to even think about that. Like, especially if somebody has potentially written amazing book, or a book that potentially has the ability to change millions of people's lives, and then they didn't take the proper precautions, and then they just lose just the value that they had and recorded.
Well,
Man.
John, almost every book has that potential. Every story has that potential. And the mistake happens is when a writer doesn't see themselves 10, 15, or 20 years into the future. The copyright law gives authors and writers copyright protections for the entire life of the writer plus 70 years. The law knows something about what we write in such a big way that it is protecting you for your entire life plus 70 years. That should tell us something there. So, writing is not just a hobby when you are thinking about publishing. That's why we talk about authors of abundance. We talk about write your worth. The very thing that you're doing today could be a Hollywood series 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So you should take the precautions to put it all in place to protect it so that you can preserve your legacy. Okay? Preserve legacy. So having the agreements in place before you hand your manuscript over to somebody is huge.
Mm.
And this, John, is something that many book coaches are not covering because many book coaches are not versed on the intellectual property side of writing and publishing a book or writing and publishing anything.
Mm. Yeah, and you say that, and I just think back to an event me and you went to some time ago, and you were doing like you always do, and like you got up and you shared about you like to go to everybody's table and just buy the books just to support the authors. But then in that one time, I remember there was one author's book you opened up, and then you said, and I was like, what is that? And then we went and sat down, and you began explaining to me that they didn't have a copyright page in place in their book.
Yeah, that's real crucial. No copyright page, or if they have a copyright page and they allow somebody else to list themselves as their publisher. We were talking to someone just recently, this week. They said, I wrote and published my first book, but I realized that I don't have control of it on Amazon. And guess what? The reason why that person doesn't have control of it on Amazon is because somebody else published that book for them and put it on Amazon and told the author that they were self-publishing. They weren't self-publishing; they were hybrid publishing.
Talk a little bit more about hybrid. That's the first time I've heard that.
Hybrid publishing is when a self-publishing service company provides writing and publishing services for you, and then you, the author, allow them to publish the book. The self-publishing service company should not be your publisher. They should just be your service provider, providing formatting, editing, proofreading, and laying out of the book. But they should not be your publisher if you think you're truly self-publishing. If you're self-publishing, you should have control of pricing, where your book is put up at, out to the world, and so forth. And many people put it up on Amazon.
Wow. Mm. And then if you don't have somebody in place who helps guide you through that process, then some of these things will just be one, there'll be enigmas because you'll think you have a book that you've self-published later down the line and find out that somebody else has the rights over your book, and somebody else may be even receiving the benefits from your book as far as just royalties and different things like that. Is that accurate, Dad?
That is very accurate. That is very accurate. One of the big advantages of self-publishing is control. Whereas
Hmm.
traditional publishing companies, they publish and they have control. So control is the kicker. Control is the cornerstone. And the self-published author should always have control. And talking about control as it relates to editing, this goes back to the main reason why you need to have the proper agreements in place before you hand over your manuscript and before you hand over your money. Okay? Because once you put your manuscript and your money into somebody else's hand, you're no longer guiding it unless you have the proper agreements in place. So editing is huge, and when you have someone editing, you need to take your feelings out of it. Now, this will be my last point on this.
Mm.
When someone else is editing your work, let them edit your work. Let them do a deep edit into your work, and you stand back and take your feelings out of it. Because if you put your feelings in it as the author and the writer, you're going to be emotional. You may not like some stuff, but that editor could be putting you in the best position to prosper in the long term if you have a qualified editor, somebody that's going to really help you do a good job. So, hey, John, we've been going on this one for a while, but I believe we've shared some things here that might help some people.
Yeah, I think you closed out with a strong cliffhanger there on the end, because I was like, "Ooh, wait a minute. That was, oh, you have to take your emotions out of it." And I think that's a big thing, because that's like going to the hospital, and then you're talking to the doctor, and then you tell the doctor what hurts, and he's like, "Okay, well, you should do this and you should do that, and then you'll be back up to speed." And then you look at the doctor, you say, "No, I'm not going to do that because I don't like how that feels." The doctor's like, "Do you want to go with what feels better, or do you want to go with what's going to make you better?" So you sharing that, I think that was a pivotal one. That was a good one for me. That was a really good one for me. But if you're an author of abundance and you're out there listening, and you're saying, "I hear what Dr. Fred is saying," really breaking down the process of editing, breaking down outlining, but at the same time, I'm still lost, I'm still confused. I would encourage you and I would implore you to go to drfredjones.com/strategy. That's the letter D, the letter R, fredjones.com/strategy. And then just apply. And there, you will get the opportunity to speak with one of the coaches on the team. And there, take a deep dive into a strategy session, complimentary strategy session, to help you further get a better understanding, and then see how we can best serve and support you. Once again, that website is drfredjones.com/strategy. And of course, if you're not following Dr. Fred, I would encourage you to follow him on all your social platforms. That's Dr. Fred Jones: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And of course, for continued resources and more video content, you can go on YouTube, and it's Dr. Fred Jones, the book coach. Did I get all that right, Dad?
Perfect. You nailed it, sir.
There we go. Dad, go ahead and close us out with your favorite phrase.
The most expensive thing you will ever pay is attention to the wrong people.
All right, authors of abundance, we will see you all next week.